All right, guys, it's 11:31. We're about to start soon, but we're waiting on one panelist. Can I check before we start that teams DW Institute and Capstone are here?
Yeah, we're here, Capstone.
DW is present.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think Chris just joined. Okay. And if both teams would like to put their speaking orders in the chat before we get started, that'd be good. Okay, thank you. Opposition, do we have your speaking order? Okay, nice. Okay, if everybody's good to go, we can get started. We can start with introductions. My name is Yao Ming. I'll be your chair for today, and I'm joined with two panelists.
Hey everyone, my name is Sogat Pokrel. No preferred pronouns. Best of luck for the round.
Hi, my name is Christopher Lau. Congrats and best of luck.
Okay. And so the motion we're debating today, this is the under-16 quarterfinals. This house regrets the rise of replica fashion. And just keep in mind, speeches are 8 minutes and protected time between 1 and 7. And yeah, I'd like to call upon the first proposition speaker to begin this debate.
Hello, adjudicator. Is the speaker audible?
Yeah.
And visible? Okay. So let me set my stopwatch. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. At the top of the speech, I want to note that this debate is not about accessibility. This is for a basic reason that the market forces of fashion solves for itself. Market segmentation exists. We do have cheaper brands and alternatives in status quo that are not reps of designer brands, such as cheaper authentic brands by independent designers or secondhand products that are tailored to the needs of low income individuals. Now, notably, if opposition wants to run a case on accessibility, they have a high burden to prove that none of these alternatives exist, which is a factual lie. Now, I want to do 3 things in this speech. First, at the top, I want to directly preempt their entire argument about accessibility. Second, I will talk about the intellectual property rights of designers and wing it against any other impact of the rounds. And third, I will talk about smaller designers and why this stifles innovation in fashion industry. Now, first, let us talk accessibility. Opposition's main case is presumably that reps are cheap. More people can access that as opposed to expensive designer bags. Now, I have 3 responses to this. First, their burden is to prove why individuals have to own a literal designer bag. I don't think this is always the case because a majority of people can pursue other alternatives and still be happy. What we are telling you though is that the fashion industry is incredibly diverse in status quo. With numerous brands offering a wide range of prices, consumers can find affordable options that are stylish and trendy without resorting to replicas. We have alternatives such as budget-friendly brands because of a simple economic logic that if you make the price at an all-time high, then no one will buy from you. So there is a natural incentive for business actors, to lower down prices and target different consumer bases with different economic capacity. Second, even if we engage at their highest ground that these individuals really need something from that designer, which is very hard to buy as an average person, we see that there are so many alternatives such as secondhand stores and even rental services for higher end fashion if you need it for certain occasions like weddings and etc. Now, furthermore, if we suggest that there has been a rise of independent, furthermore, we suggest that there has in fact been a rise of independent designers and labels. The growth of independent designers and small labels has provided more options at various price points. These designers often offer unique styles that can provide consumers with distinctive fashion choices already. Furthermore, I think by the fact of digitalization, it has become easier for consumers to access choices of fashion. Now, what does this look like? It looks like online marketplaces, social media platforms, and fashion apps that have made it easier than ever for consumers to access a wide range of fashion options, including affordable and secondhand items. So crucially, this argument proves two things. Number one, individuals don't need bags from designers. They can offer cheaper alternatives that have existed in market by virtue of market segmentation. And number two, even if they need designer clothes, they have alternatives such as secondhand stores, rental stores, and even independent designers with small labels that offer in a much cheaper rate. Opposition has to disprove both of these mechanisms to even run the argument on accessibility. Now, the second argument then on intellectual property. The premise of this argument is simple. Replica fashion blatantly infringes on the intellectual property rights of established brands. Now, why? There's three reasons for this. Number one, fashion designers invest substantial amounts of time and effort and financial resources into creating new designs. It took months of extensive research, experimentation, and refinement to produce something unique and appealing. It's not just about drawing a sketch, it's about bringing a creative vision to life, which often requires technical expertise, an understanding of materials, and an awareness of current trends and cultural influences. Second, designing and I'll accept the POI later. Designing original fashion items is a deeply creative process that often involves a personal expression of artistry. This is why you have a claim to intellectual property, while designers may take inspiration from other sources. This creativity is not just in the aesthetics of the design, but also in problem solving, such as how to make a garment more comfortable, durable, or sustainable. Now, third, designers and brands, built a unique identity and ethos around their creations. There is an emotional investment in this process, as each design often reflects the values, visions, and artistic direction of the designer or that brand. This identity is what set original brands different from their imitators. Now, I would be accepting your POI. 5, 4, 3.
People copy artwork all the time, right? So if replicas are not exact copies and are just alternatives without the trademark or without the exact replica, can you not justify?
Sorry, can you rephrase?
Sorry. So if people are copying artwork all the time, right? The same thing is happening with replicas. And if replicas are not exact copies and just taking inspiration without the logo or the trademark, can it not be justified?
Okay, so I have a response to this. But the thing is that in our side, there is labor put into it. We told you while designers may take inspiration from other sources, this creativity is not just in the aesthetics of the design, but also in problem solving, such as how to make a garment more comfortable, durable, or sustainable. So there is intellectual contribution to this ground, not just the idea. Now, I would like to move on with my argument. Why is this important? Why is this argument important in the first place? Well, first, intellectual rights are crucial for the economic viability of designers and fashion brands. When replicas flood the market, they can significantly undercut the sales of original items, depriving creators of deserved revenue. This not only affects the financial well-being of designers, but can also deter future investment in new designs and innovation. I want to note that not all designers are rich. Some designers are African American women who are designing for a living. You're literally taking their only source of income. Now, second, consumers may become skeptical about the authenticity of these products, which can harm the reputation of literally legitimate brands. It dilutes the uniqueness and value of original designs. When a design is replicated without permission, it can saturate the market, making the original less distinctive. Now, I want to note, considering we have weighed down the importance of having designer bags for literally average individuals, this would be weighed higher because this is regarding their principled right to get compensated for their hard work and creativity. Now, I would like to pose a third argument, then on stifling innovation from smaller designers. Now, replicas can quickly replicate trends with minimal expenditure on development and research. This advantage, coupled with their substantial advertising budgets, allows them to overshadow smaller designers. these smaller businesses struggle to compete with the pricing and market presence of larger companies, leading to reduced innovation as small designers face economic pressures and reduce market presence. Their ability to innovate diminishes. Innovation in fashion often comes from these independent designers who are willing to take creative risks and explore unique ideas. However, if they cannot sustain their businesses due to competition from replicas, the industry loses potential groundbreaking designs and creative diversity. This is as obvious as can be. Furthermore, the dominance of replicas and larger brands can lead to job losses in smaller fashion businesses. As these businesses struggle to compete, they may be forced to even downside or even close, leading to a loss of employment opportunities in this specific sector. Now, there are three short harms of this: the dominance of larger brands, and number two, higher price items from these major brands or replicas that are just simply put in front of the consumer, reducing consumer choice and accessibility to diverse fashion options. And at that, we are also engaging in their best case that if people love fashion, this dilutes the meaning of fashion itself. Fashion is not just about wearing trends. It's about personal expression, artistry, and cultural statements. When the market is flooded with these replicas, these deeper aspects of fashion are overshadowed by mass-produced trend-focused items, leading to a homogenized style and a loss of artistic and expressive elements that make fashion literally meaningful. And this is why we stand pro.
Okay, thank you, first proposition. Let's have the first opposition speaker now.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
I will be taking verbal POIs. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Before proposition goes on about alternatives, proposition needs to recognize the difference between replicas and counterfeit goods, where replicas is essentially the so-called alternative they're basing their entire case off of. Just for this, our argument today is that the increase in accessibility is inherently a good thing, and there are 3 layers of arguing this. Firstly, how there's a significant role in satisfying the desire for luxury among consumers. Secondly, how accessibility increases and can overall benefit the fashion industry in the long term. And thirdly, how this impacts the inclusivity of society for the future. A quick rebuttal here first. A proposition has talked about, how we are taking their only source of income, implying that replicas are going to replace designer brands. But then they continue saying that, replicas are different from the designer brands. Don't you think that this is a bit contradictory? This is exactly why we believe that replicas will not be replacing these designer brands and won't harm the designer brand themselves, which will be elaborated later on in our speech. Proposition based their entire case off of, intellectual property rights, but this argument doesn't stand on any grounds because of their misunderstanding in what replica defines us, which I will be elaborating on in my setup here. We define replicas as goods that are similar to a famous product, but they carry a different logo design, right? Replicas merely mimic a genuine product with clear differences and omissions so that consumers are not deceived. As defined in the info slide, they imitate various famous goods, but they don't take their exact trademark or copy or labeling of packaging, which means that we are not infringing on their trademark, therefore we won't infringe on the artist's rights by any means. Replicas and counterfeits are 2 different concepts. The counterfeit that proposition has been going on is that they attempt to exactly recreate luxury products, usually for malignant means, such as to detract from the brand value. And we want to establish that replicas are often clearly stated or identifies as inauthentic for consumer knowledge. Besides, we want to preemptively establish that it is extremely difficult for one to mistake a replica for a real deal, given that often replicas are high-end fashion products and that these products often have trademarks and quality assurances and so on, such as the proof of leather quality and sourcing. These replicas are therefore made with no intent to deceive most of the time, but just to offer an accessible alternative. We also then want to establish that replicas will not be replacing high-end fashion goods and devalue them as part of the rebuttal. High-end fashion goods are known for their superior quality and meticulous craftsmanship, made from premium materials and undergo a rigorous production process, resulting in products that are durable, well-constructed, and designed to last. With high-end fashion brands that are building a strong reputation for excellence and exclusivity over time, they have a strong brand identity that are associated with luxury, prestige, and status. Therefore, despite having these so-called replicas in the status quo, and so far we can still see the high demand of luxury goods existing in the market, proving that replicas won't be driving such a demand away. So what is the status quo on our side of the house then? Replicas is existing on a larger scale. They range from upper middle class stores, for example, Zara copying of these luxury brands, as well as lower quality online stores and other flea markets. In recent years, there has been a rise in sustainable and ethical fashion brands that offer affordable options to consumers while prioritizing fair trade practices, environmentally friendly materials, and ethical labor conditions. We also tell you that replication has been around for a long time, even in feudal times, right? Emperors and
POI?
would recreate luxurious goods. We tell that many art pieces are inspired by replication and then putting a personal twist onto them. Therefore, what this means is that firstly, given replicas are not direct copies, and secondly, that it inspires further creation and has been done so in a long time, it should be normalized. These brands therefore focusing on creating original designs that are inspired by
POI?
brands, but are not direct, I'll take that later, direct copy of high-end designer items. By offering affordable alternatives, we are making fashion more accessible to a wider range of consumers, promoting inclusivity and reducing the demand for replica clothing. For example, Recycla, a black brand that fuses recycle and replica, builds on how we can transform vintage clothing into very new and now clothing for the current season. I'll take your POI.
If replicas don't thrive, then you're undercutting your own benefits on accessibility, making your only positive benefits marginal.
We're not reducing accessibility by any means because of the fact that through these replicas, we are allowing lower incomes and other marginalized groups to have the access to these high-end fashion designs, not their exact goods, which means that they can wear them out and won't be discriminated against, which I will be elaborating on our case. So now a bit of comparative for their side, right? A world without replicas is that fashion is going to remain as this elitist concept, right? Many luxurious fashion brands set high price points for their products and make them incredibly inaccessible to a large portion of the population. This exclusively creates a sense of elitism, as only those with significant financial means can afford to purchase these items. Luxurious fashion brands often limit their distribution to select high-end flagship stores, which further reinforces this perception of exclusivity. This limited accessibility can make fashion feel exclusive and unattainable for those who do not have access to these channels. The lack of replicas in their side of the world can exacerbate this problem both financially and in terms of quality, which my second speaker, Valerie, will be elaborating on. So our side's burden is that if we can prove that this does not infringe upon the rights of the original designers and creators, which is basically Proposition's whole argument, the benefits of accessibility outweighs the detriments, then we take this debate. Now onto my case on how replicas can increase the accessibility of fashion. So the first layer is that increased accessibility allows more people to feel good about themselves. For example, Air Forces or Harry Styles crocheted sweaters can be more accessible. Clothing is this powerful form of self-expression, allowing individuals to showcase their personality, creativity, individuality, and so on. When clothing is more accessible, people have a wider range of options to choose from, enabling them to find styles to resonate with their personal taste and identity. This increased self-expression can boost their confidence and positively impact how individuals feel about themselves in the first place. The affordability of clothing plays a significant role in accessibility. When fashion is more affordable, right, it becomes accessible to a larger range of individuals, regardless of their socioeconomic background. Affordable clothing options allow people to experiment with different styles, keep up with trends, and express themselves without financial constraints. This accessibility can contribute to a sense of empowerment and improve self-images. And now to my second layer on how this drives up brand engagement and increases the rarity of the original product. Firstly, a bit of characterization, right? The Birkin bag is seen as the ultimate symbol of wealth and privilege, only accessible to long-term MS customers who who throw hundreds of thousands of dollars per year at the brand just to get a chance to purchase a Birkin. The sheer unattainability of the bag means that how thousands of youths aspire to purchase this bag one day as a sign of how far they got. Yet in the status quo, only 200,000 Birkins are in circulation to this day, meaning that only the ultra-rich can access it. By having replicas, it reminds these individuals that their goal one day are to serve as this temporary alternative. That means that they won't stop wanting to buy a Birkin, and on the flip side, these replicas are only temporary. In conclusion, it is really important to increase accessibility of fashion. Therefore, I'm so proud to oppose.
Okay, thank you, first opposition. Let's have second proposition now.
Okay. Think that before I start my speech, is it okay if I take a bathroom break?
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay. Judges ready, opponents ready. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Now, I would like to state 2 issues. Number 1, intellectual property. I want to deal with the strongest response from opposition. Now, they said that the designer bags also draw inspiration from the others. Thus, the intellectual property argument can be disregarded. Now, this is ridiculous. This is literally an argument against all forms of intellectual property that we have principally recognized in this status quo, such as copyright, patent, etc. Crucially, ideas are never original, we concede, but the idea of intellectual property is not necessarily that the ideas have to be 100% original. It is recognition to a new innovative way to create a product, even though you have drawn inspiration from other sources. Now, we tell you this since math, the 2 things that went unrebutted. Number 1, this creativity is not just in the aesthetics of the design, but also in the problem solving that is inherent to your intellectual contribution, such as how to make a garment more comfortable, durable, or sustainable, a unique way to distinguish your product with the others. And number 2, we tell you that designing original fashion items is a deeply creative process that often involves a personal expression of artistry. There's an emotional investment in this process, as each design often reflects the values, visions, and artistic direction of the designer or brand. It is something personal and it belongs to them. Thus, opposition has the burden to prove why intellectual property is only reserved to be aesthetic design. That is not the case. We can see in terms of patent, we patent medicines for the same diseases that are new in efficiency, even though they use some same ingredients targeting same diseases. But even if you don't buy this, we tell you that they should be compensated by the unique amounts of time, effort, and financial resources into creating new design. It took months of extensive research, experimentation, and refinement to produce something unique and appealing. We think principally, if we agree that laborers should get paid accordingly because of their physical time and contribution, it should not be any different to designers because they have spent their intellectual labor, time, and effort on it. Then they said that, oh, rest assured, people can tell which one is a replica because originals have trademark assurance of quality. Thus, replicas will not replace this. Now, there's two things wrong with this. Number one, this is a contradiction because if that is true, that replicas won't thrive, then their argument about accessibility becomes moot because majority still buys the original brand. They have to concede that replicas will thrive or else they're undercutting their own benefit. And number two, they conceded
POI?
I would like to accept your POI later, that middle class can buy replicas now. This means that they concede to our economic harms to designers for the simple reason that middle class compromises our majority of the population. That means more sustainable. People are now going to buy replicas. Now, before moving on, I would like to accept your PI.
We tell you that the customers of the high-end brands that are often being copied are also the ultra-rich. Doesn't that mean that both the ultra-rich and the working classes can both afford the same product now?
No, but here's the thing. This is literally what I've been talking about before. The contradiction that you made, which is if replicas won't thrive, then how is this going to be possible? How is it going to be accessible? This is exactly the contradiction that we are pointing out in your team. And in addition to that, I would like to go on to my next one then. Then they said that it is important for poor to not be discriminated against. Now, two responses. Number one, by their own logic, that people can't tell which one is a replica and original. That means that the poor can still feel inadequate by the fact that their friends can always tell that their bag is fake. That's why they can't claim their positive impact because their mitigation literally undercuts it. And number two, we actually tell you that the proliferation of replica worsens pressure for poor to define fashion as designer bag, pressuring them to only view fashion in Dior and designer bags. In comparison, on our side, without proliferating their trend, poor can view fashion in cheaper alternatives, less societal pressure. They can view fashion as something that they can express themselves in without the need of defining it through designer brands. Now, the opposition also says that they define replicas and knockoffs as different things. No, both replicas and counterfeits are imitations of originals, often branded products. They copy the design and sometimes even the branding of the original item without authorization from the rightful owner or creator. This imitation can range from an exact copy to a close resemblance. But even if no, it doesn't matter. Both types of products can mislead consumers. Counterfeits often attempt to pass as a genuine, I would not like to accept your prayer, as genuine products, while replicas may or may not explicitly claim to be genuine, but still create confusion due to their close resemblance to original products. In both cases, the consumer might be under the impression that they are purchasing a product of quality or status that they are not actually receiving. What does this mean? This is fraud. So it doesn't matter in theory. It is what consumers perceive. Now, they said that replicas make it so that marginalized people can show that they have designer brand. And what is our response to this? Now, this is the problem with their stance. We told you in Matthew's speech that the burden from prop is why people should showcase that they have designer brands. The very justification of replicas come from them is that, oh, people can show that they are rich too. Now, this is the exact narrative that we are against. We don't want to value people on the fact that they have material goods. However, but encouraging the use of replicas to make designer brands more accessible, you create the social narrative of materialism as the prerequisite of being valuable. Now, furthermore, the POI cuts their own case. They said that only 1% buy designer bag. That means it is not a necessity for poor to. That means that it is not a necessity for poor to buy designer bags. It traps them in a further loop that they have to stay trendy by having Dior. It is a race to the bottom. Because the fact of the matter is, at first they are pressured to buy a replica. Next, their friends tell them it's fake. Then they are pressured to buy the real one. This is a loop that they cannot get out of, when this literally disregards the whole entire purpose of fashion as a thing to express yourself. Now, what is going to happen in our world? In our world, people are not going to be materialistic. They're not going to define people, or they're not going to see other people for what type of brands they have, or they're not just going to be picky about the people that they want to be friends with just because they have this certain brand or not. People are not materialistic in our world. Now, what is the weighing to what I've all the things that I've just said before? Now, first, even if people can access designer bags now, it creates a race to the bottom, increasing standard of fashion, making it less accessible to most people to actually access real bags. Number two, we told you that right now, when people really need it, there are many alternatives such as rental services, second-hand stories, and to point out, they never responded to our alternatives. They never responded as to why these things can't just be a way for people to access it if they really, really need it. In their worst case, in which people really need these designers bags to actually live or as a part of their daily life. Now, due to the things I have said before, if the opposition truly have a case and doesn't keep on switching stance, then we can clearly see by this that the ballot should be a pro. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, second proposition. Let's have second opposition now.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Great. I'll just set up my timer. Okay, great. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Proposition today has to stop villainizing the use of replicas as people who are trying to pass themselves off as rich people, people who are only materialistic and blindly following trends, right? We tell you that fashion is about personal expression. We agree with Prop. Fashion is about expressing yourselves and choosing to present yourself how you want. And if the way that people to express themselves is through these possessions of products that are trendy, that are creative, that are popular all over the internet. Doesn't that also serve as part of their self-expression? We tell you that replicas are often a force of good, right? Think about the popular Taylor Swift sweater that's all over the internet. The sweater is extremely exclusive with only a few thousand copies circulating, right? Because these copies are so limited, right? The brands are still profiting over the scarcity of it because people are rushing to buy them, meaning that the brands still get profit. But also, people who don't get that sweater will feel isolated, will feel alienated. And a crowd of fans who all have the same sweater, surely they would also want to have it, right? Then these fans will go onto the internet to buy replicas. These replicas are not only exact carbon copies; they're often different forms, such as cardigans based off different albums, right? This means that these fans will still get to partake in the joy while having unidentical, but having an identical products that still give them the joy of partaking into it. Proposition spent half their case in the first two speeches trying to preemptively knock us down. But what that resulted is a highly predictable case and practically no world building. Panel, Proposition failed to characterize what the role will look like until the end of Prop 2. They tell us that in their role, people will choose their fantasies of how they, not on how they dress, and that people will not be materialistic in their role. We tell you that this such a gross simplification because the gap is only exacerbated in the world, right? These bags will become more and more exclusive and will be seen as more and more of a status symbol. This means that more and more people will try to suck up to people with these bags, creating an even bigger rich and poor gap and creating even bigger of a sense of artificial scarcity, meaning that more people will feel self-conscious about the way they dress, making their point counterintuitive. Proposition has never provided a concrete example of the replicas that they're talking about, right? So they say that these replicas are going to be about small designers. Then they say that this is going to be about high-end, extremely exclusive bags. So Proposition, can you get yourself clear about what you're talking about? They also have to stop stuffing words into our mouths, right? Some strategic rebuttals. Firstly, they tell us that fashion is for self-expression, but then they tell us that we should shame the poor for wanting to follow trends, for wanting to get in on the exclusive, highly exclusive and luxurious world, right? We're telling you that these replicas are not entirely copies. We tell you that fashion is a world where trends are created by fashion products, right? Because these trends are circulated. Fashion is extremely limited. How many versions of a white sweater can you get? So does that mean that every product that is based on the first white sweater are all replicas of it, meaning that all of these should not exist. Proposition case falls today because they completely fail to characterize what replicas are in the world. This they did not characterize whether turtlenecks, right? Are these all replicas? If these are all replicas, then does it mean that a lot of people are going to lose out on not having these fashion products, meaning that the innovation that they prize is going to fall, right? Because innovation is not going to be continued if people do not take inspiration and continue. Moving on to some of my main rebuttals, right? They tell us that there are going to be alternative and cheaper fashion choices for the underprivileged and the working class who cannot afford them. But often these alternatives are based on the high-end products. We tell you that high-end products are very influential, right? Meaning that a lot of trends are set by them. And given that replicas copy their designs in part but not fully, which is our definition, which proposition fails to challenge, doesn't mean that a lot of these alternatives are replicas. Moving on, they also tell us that intellectual properties of designers are going to be undercut, right? They tell us that innovation does decrease. We tell you no, because these designers at the top of the design chain, which means that they're at the very top, very popular, very influential, right? This means that they're going to be creating trends, getting people to replicate some of their most signature styles, such as Coco Chanel's scoop neck, right? This means that all these products using the scoop neck after Coco Chanel does so are replicas. This means that in propositions world, this innovation is going to be decreased. We tell you the replicas are often clearly identified as inauthentic. Proposition has failed to characterize how exactly this infringes upon intellectual property. Like I said earlier, if Dior comes out with a black dress, it's a dress of a similar style or replica. They never characterize how exactly they define replicas without any proof or evidence, right? I'll take a POI before I continue. No engagements, I'll continue. They call us contradictory and put words into our mouth. But this only shows that they're having a fundamental misunderstanding of what counterfeit and what replica is, right? Replicas often hop onto a trend, and as we are a collective people who all like to follow trends, we cannot fault them. Opposition needs to realize that there are times where high-end goods take design from smaller businesses as well. So why does this intellectual property only stand for high-end brands in their case? Does this not reveal a proposition's elitism? Therefore, the argument can and will not stand. Moving on. They tell us that this harms the livelihood of small designers, right? Firstly, two layers to argue this point. Firstly, this debate should not center around small designers because it's often fashion house products that are being replicated. Today, we take proposition on their best case on our second layer that these designers get the products copied. This means that these products are popular, right? Because they're being copied. And the fact that people are buying replicas and not the actual, meaning that the actual products are very scarce, meaning that the actuals will be sold out by the point. And those with the financial ability will be able to afford it, meaning that these designers are supported. And because now that they're on the big scene where people are seeing their products and actually supporting them, this means that they will continue to thrive in the fashion scene. Flipping propositions forward and meaning that this will actually boost the economy. This moves on to my extension. That replicas actually challenge the inherent elitism of fashion because on proposition side, the comparative is that without these replicas, the luxury product prices will only be driven and the quality guarantee will drop. This means that because there is no competition, because there are no replicas driving them to continue to work up to a high quality, this means that many of these businesses will decrease the quality of the product and people will still buy them because of the inherent privilege of owning these products. Like Ariel said about her example about Birkins, right? On our side of the house, because we're stimulating the economy, having these replicas circulate the market, these brands are actually driven to do better. For instance, for interviews, people know it's important to look good, right? Having these replicas also encourage people with lower incomes to take these opportunities without worrying about their appearance. This challenges the elitism of fashion. We tell you that fashion is an extremely exclusive circle, right? Adding a layer onto Ariel's argument, accessible clothing removes barriers and promotes equal opportunities. This allows people of all income levels to pursue various activities and level the playing field. For example, the Met Gala is such an exclusive circle, only allowing celebrities into it, right? No, it's protected time. This means that only these celebrities are allowed to partake in those fashion. However, in the Met Gala, it also stimulates a lot of fashion trends, meaning that a lot of people will start to want to replicate it. Replica goods support the idea that more people will be accessible in it, will be able to partake in accessible fashion, meaning that this leads to a growth in the fashion industry in the long term because trends are stimulated and people's creativity is also stimulated. We tell you that overall, the weighing is that it's much better on our side of the house because not only will these luxurious products still be supported, right? it also reduces the wealth gap and the accessibility gap, meaning that more people will be allowed to really express themselves. We also tell you that more stakeholders are benefit on our side. And because the propositions completely lacking characterization, because of the completely contradictory case, it's clear that we take today's debate and we are very, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, second opposition. Let's have third proposition now.
Adjudicator, am I both visible and audible?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Let me quickly set my timer. Okay. My time will start in 3, 2, 1. Now, the opposition cannot have its cake and eat it too. First, they said that, oh, this replica is not entirely copies and can easily be differentiated. But on the same breath, they then said that the poor needs to have the same exact sweater like all their other rich counterparts. This is so confusing and inherently contradictory. The first thing I want to deal with is the idea that replica is not entirely copies. First structural reason, the first thing I want to note is that this is a desperate illustration of replica. Factually, replicas copy the design, the style, and even the branding of the original item to an extent where it is an extremely close resemblance. I want to note that such close resemblance is an instrument to intellectual property too. For example, an Olivia Rodrigo song, even though it's not 100% same as a Taylor Swift or a Paramore song, literally it can be sued for copyright infringement. We can see this being parallel to the fashion market. Second structural reason, even if it's true that, oh, it's not 100% similar, then the poor will still feel inadequate. You argue that, oh, the poor can own these rich items, but they never respond to actually Ava's analysis on the race to the bottom. That their friends tell them that it's fake, and it makes them feel bad about themselves, especially since they're embarrassed that, oh, they're desperate to use replicas later. This makes them pressured to buy even real designs, ones from luxury brands that they themselves cannot afford but are socially coerced to. Why? Because your side makes it seem that, oh, the only thing that I am worth is if I have a Dior bag, wear Gucci shoes, and an LV jacket. When in comparison, we say that we could have actually opted for cheaper alternatives. Well, they can still buy sweater, they just don't prove why they have to buy high-end sweaters. Reality check. Just like what Omar Fazlan said last round, you need to reality check. Do poor really care about using high-end fashion brands? No. Because maybe it's a thing in Capstone where they are rich, but in reality, it's not the case. I'll take that POI.
Do you not agree that this pressure is even worse on your side to buy luxury products because they become even more and more exclusive, creating?
No, it's not. Why? Because the fact of the matter is, we have alternatives. They just don't bother to buy it. That's the nuance that side opposition doesn't understand our stance. We tell you that they don't have to buy sweaters from LV. They can buy sweaters from cheaper brands with cheaper trends. The SMEs who are being stifled of their innovative ideas. Why? Because on your side, we have to buy the replicas because I need to seem rich. This is not the case. Here's the thing. To cast a ballot for prop, it's easy. You just need to reality check. All you have to do is see that the life is not based on that, oh, I have to be rich. You just need to see the reality that not all poor people care about, oh, I need to have an LV bag. No, they need to make ends meet. And the reason they do this is because, like what you said, they need affordable things. Yet you have the idea that, oh, we need to create a world where people are seen to be elites. Your argument on elitism is entirely contradictory, which I will tackle later in my speech. I'd like to deal with two issues further. First, on accessibility, dealing with their entire main case. First, they said it's elitism. 3 pathways of victory from Gov. First and foremost, we tell you that from the get-go, from Matthew's speech, which seems like they entirely ignore, that there is literally many options. For example, rental service, second-hand, things like this where it is affordable for the poor. Here's the thing. If they say that, oh, only the top 1% normally buy designer bags, then that means the poor doesn't literally need to own the bag. It's as simple as that. Think of basic economics. We say realistically, they're probably, yes, needed for a wedding. Well, in that case, then they can rent. Or if they really need it, then they can buy secondhand. They don't have to be desperate and go to the replicas that you guys talk about just to seem rich. Realistically, they don't need LV. They can buy cheaper brands. Why? Because what they care about the most is the garments, whether the clothes fits their body or not, whether it's snug and comfortable. I want to say that if they say that, oh, only 1% buy from it, that means you only benefit the top 1% in full of fashion designers. Wow, who actually work hard for their craft. So, judge, note that the entire case is a contradiction in and of itself. In resolving this clash, you need to ask one simple question. As a fellow middle class, do you really care about owning this LV bag? No. You can wear Uniqlo. You can wear other affordable small middle enterprise rejected small middle enterprises just so that you don't have to seem rich and you can counter the narrative of materialism. Next, their justification of them misleading is, oh, but marginalized people can buy replicas. We ask you this question, something that is too late for them to answer in opposition with. Why replicas? We tell you first, we provide an alternative without infringing on the rights and violating the hard work of designers. We tell you there are affordable options from small and middle class enterprises that still make trendy, make creative, and make unique clothing without needing to spend thousands of dollars on a designer brand or to support replicas which stifle this all small to middle class enterprises. The tipping point here is then simple, ladies and gentlemen. First, they don't prove why people have to own a replica. They never engage to any of mass alternatives. They ignore it and turn a blind eye. But second, even if in need, we tell you that there's a race to the bottom because there's more pressure to own real products. On your side, we tell you that the poor feel inadequate because they are poor. They don't have any belief in themselves. Why? Because the entire narrative that you push is I have to be rich. When in the case on our side, no, we can buy from small to middle class enterprises. We can buy affordable things. We don't have to push to be having designer brands like LV and Gucci. Next, the principle on intellectual property, which they never engage. Why? Because if they say that, oh, yeah, but these replicas, they're not 100% the same. We engage with this in all three of our speeches, but they never touch upon it. We tell you that first, it's a violation of the people who work super hard for their design. Not only about the style, not only about the branding, but also the material, how it feels, and things like that. But second, even if you don't buy and trust them that all replicas are not 100% the same, we tell you that this is parallel to other industries where just because it's not 100% the same, you still can be sued for copyright infringement. If you side with a world where you literally violate the law, then side with opposition. But if you side with a world where intellectual property is actually touched on, is actually protected, that crucially ideas are never original, then you side with our side. The idea is that intellectual property is not necessarily the idea that it has to be 100% original. It is recognition to a new innovative way to create a product. They never told you and they never responded. We tell you that there's two alternative grounds for our intellectual property protection. First, based on intellectual contribution in terms of problem solving, and second, based on the intellectual labor of hard work that these designers put in. So the weighing here is simple. This is the most important clash because the clash of accessibility is marginal. Maybe only a very minority of people would really want to own a designer brand, but it is mitigable by the fact that there are many alternatives. The fact is that there's certain and damning for African American designers who put in so much hard work and deserves to be recognized, but doesn't. Why? Because of all your replicas and all your frauds. With that, side with Pro. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, third proposition. Let's have third opposition now.
Okay, my speech will begin in 3, 2, 1. We feel that proposition completely fails to listen to our whole case. They give us 24 minutes of blabber. We've told you again and again why replicas are necessary. We tell you again why this stimulates the economy. No engagement. Proposition only creates a world in today's debate where a highly sought after bag will become as rare as Wonka's golden ticket. They tell us that all we care about is a world that is rich. That is the harsh truth of the world. That people judge you based off your appearance. Again, no engagement. And proposition is so contradictory because they accuse us of being materialistic when in their world they drive at the wealth gap and create artificial scarcity. No engagement. Again, before I go on, I'm going to do some rebuttals and then some framing and then 2 clashes. First, some rebuttal. They tell us that if they're poor, they won't have to buy it. The proposition tells us that we can buy clothes from cheaper brands. So the truth is that these brands are copying rich brands as well. And the influence side, it says that these replicas are often on popular fashion platforms, meaning that that as our second speaker told you, a lot of these alternatives that proposition proposes are replicas. Doesn't mean that in their world a lot of these products will not exist, and these platforms that provide their lovely alternatives will not be making enough to stay afloat. They say they'll buy alternatives. Isn't the alternatives they so-called replica? They say that middle class can just buy from Uniqlo, but isn't this exactly an example from upper class brands often replicating trends? Are they supporting a replicas then? Choose a side. Replica fashion challenges the elitism of fashion industries. It is when a minority is unable to get a job because of its clothing. It is when someone is looked down upon at their workplace just because of the bag they wear being not quote unquote trendy. It is too late for proposition to introduce the characterizations of replicas in their third speech, but we hoped our point would be engagement. They talk about close resemblance, but know how we have time and time mentioned in our debate how replicas are not exact copies, to which proposition has never engagement. For that, I'm going to go on to my framings. First, why replicas mainly replicate high elitist brands? Right, because of demand affordable alternatives. High-end designers are often known for their unique designs, and however these high prices make them inaccessible to many consumers. 2, fashion trends and popularities, and 3, stats and symbolism. All in all, replicas only replicate brands that have high popularity and have high trends, i.e. Gucci, i.e. Chanel. So why are minorities or those who are financially burdened only going to buy replica fashions? 1, thrifting is not a good solution because it's not consistent, right? When in a thrift store are you gonna find high-end clothing that's actually real? 2, cheap and affordable clothing. Most likely they're not gonna make high-end clothing through cheap and affordable clothing. And 3, renting. Renting is simply a solution for like stuff such as weddings. But what our whole case is centered on is why it helps those who actually need it for stuff like getting a job, etc.
UI?
So So fashion replicas are the only way for people to get their jobs and support their families. This is also directly engaging their argument. 1, societal barriers. They may see them as lower status, and looks have a definite impact on the jobs they get. As explained in my introduction, it is when a minority is unable to get a job because of his clothes. That is a world we do not want to live in. It is 2, and it's obviously a cheaper option. I'll take that later. Cheaper option, because many of these replica bags are of course cheaper than such as renting, such as thrifting. They simply cannot afford it to find a job. Before I move on to the POI. 3, 2.
You say that poor people needs to look good to get a job. So are you saying that clothes from SMEs are not looking good, but instead good design is based on luxury brands and replicas?
Luxury brands, of course, are going to help them get jobs because they're seen as higher end or better than such as like lower class, because they're able to buy into the narrative of in this status quo, they're able to buy into the narrative that they're higher end, and which will secure them better job opportunities. So onto my first clash. What has prop brought us today? They say it'll hurt businesses of fashion companies, and it'll harm intellectual property. So why is this problematic, right? Let's be charitable and say that this is true. But why is this so unsubstantial? Fashion companies are notoriously known to be elitist, the billion-dollar companies that perpetuate the narrative of the elite. Systemic issues such as income inequality and limited representation still exist within the fashion industry. Our side believes that slightly hurting the billion-dollar fashion companies, as stated in my framing, is not nearly as substantial as providing minorities or those of developing countries with jobs, billion dollar companies will be barely affected by replicas. Why is this true? High-end fashion brands have established a strong reputation and brand image over time, as explained in my first speaker. They are associated with exclusivity, craftsmanship, and unique design. Consumers who value these aspects are more likely to purchase authentic products from these brands. Even if replicas are
POI?
available at lower prices, the perceived value and status associated with owning genuine luxury items can outweigh the allure of replicas for many consumers. 2, even if people choose to buy these replicas, there are of course billion-dollar companies which would be very minor, like small, like basically no effect. Okay, second of all, why is this the case? Social mobility for developing countries and minorities.
POI?
One, minorities cannot get a job. I will not be taking any more POIs. So one, minorities cannot get a job, right? Because they're seen as lower class and they're seen as in the lower status. And it also provides individuals with the opportunity to present themselves in ways that align with their goals and aspirations. Access to affordable high-end fashion can help individuals from marginalized groups projects a professional image, which can be crucial for job interviews, career engagement, and many other things such as social interaction to be seen as we see in one of them, and can contribute to breaking stereotypes and challenging societal biases. So, onto my second clash. What have they stated? They said they'll create a social narrative of materialism. So why is this problematic? As explained before, why the way we have framed this debate is for the minorities. Why are those harms symmetrical? Materialism is always going to exist. No matter how they say materialism is not going to exist on their side, it's always going to exist. Them saying that the world eradicates such narrative, it's both extreme and unrealistic. So let's do some comparing. Let's do some comparing. What is props world? They say props world. One, they have social gaps. Fashion, particularly luxury fashion, is often associated with status and symbols and exclusivity. Certain brands of fashion items are seen as markers of wealth, success, and social standing. This creates a hierarchy within society where individuals who can afford luxury fashion are perceived as more privileged or more esteemed. This perpetuates social gaps, reinforcing notions of class and reinforcing social divisions. When a minority is unable to get a job because of his clothing and his quote-unquote status, when minorities are treated differently just because of their clothes, that is a world we do not want to live in. So what is our world? Our world allows for personal expression, and as social gaps will be incrementally closed because our clothing are not compared, because clothes are not going to be compared, because minorities are able to put food on the table and get stable jobs, and this also challenges the elitism of fashion. So why is this important? It was able to break poverty cycles, and it is able to allow minorities and those from marginalized groups to put food on the table, and we believe that's what's most important and what the fashion industry should be about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, third opposition. Let's have the opposition reply. Sorry.
Hello, am I audible and visible?
Yeah.
Great. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. There's a reason why the common saying is that Delulu is the Salulu, because for many, the purchase of replica products is a Delulu that they can become it until that becomes the reality, their true Lulu. Throughout this debate, there has been one major lack of engagement to what we have defined replica as, right? Proposition brings us poor characterization, poor engagement, poor case. When we have a government bench that spends half their case trying to preemptively take our points down and can only propose their own flimsy, half-baked, contradictory points, it's clear that we take in today's debate. Let me tell you what we as opposition have brought you today. We tell you that the increase in accessibility is inherently a good point, right? We tell you that our first speaker, Ariel, has brought 3 layers to this argument. Firstly, that there is a significant role in these products for satisfying the desire of luxury among consumers, as well as how this is actually a necessity for many, given that fashion is actually a reflection of how they appear and can actually affect their career prospects and how they're viewed, right? We also tell you that overall accessibility can benefit the fashion industry because even on our worst case, which I'll be comparing later, these brands will have a higher scarcity of their actual products. While more people can't access it, while more people can access the product, right? The scarcity of the actual thing will be increased and it will become more rare and more exclusive. This means that not only can more people access it, for the rich, having an actual authentic product that will actually be seen as a symbol of status, right? While having a replica will still satisfy the poor, meaning that more stakeholders are affected on our side. We also flip proposition's point about the economy because we tell you that the benefits for designers are outweighing the detriments on our side of the house. Because due to accessibility, their designs will be continuously appreciated, right? We tell you, which I'll be expanding on later, that these designers will actually have increased exposure because the reason why they're only being replicated means that they're popular, right? We tell you that the Taylor Swift sweater is a good example of this because while the original product is sold out, meaning that these designers are actually benefiting, more people will still get to enjoy it. More on this when I weigh my cases later. We also tell you that the comparative on proposition side of the house is that their world will drive the prices of luxury products up, creating even more of a materialistic society, thus flipping their point about the materialism on our side, as Lincoln told you. Now, what has proposition brought us in today's debate? They tell us that firstly, alternatives exist on their side of the house. However, the middle class clothing alternatives that they talk about are often producing replicas, right? Have you seen the Rory Gilmore sweaters that have been existing in stores all over the world? As Ariel has told you, there are countless brands that have been manufacturing sweaters of a similar style, right? This means that on Proposition's world, a lot of these products will not exist anymore. And because of the poor world building, our point stats on their side, not only will these products cease to exist, meaning that the platforms that house them in the inflow side, as said, these platforms like Shine and like Temu will actually lose profit, meaning that people will have less alternatives to buy from, meaning that on their side of the world, the working classes and the middle classes will actually be hurt. We also tell you that their point about intellectual property does not stand because we say that while these products of these designers will be copied, we have two ways to refute this. Firstly, that fashion will always be a world where trends are copied, and that as proposition has not properly defined replication, it means that a lot of these products currently existing on the market are considered replication, meaning that on their side there will be a net negative. Secondly, that the benefits brought by the designers is a net positive. And thirdly, that because this debate is actually focused on big fashion houses, it will not cause a dent on their profit because their products will still be as scarce. Also, way of our worlds is that their side of the house, the best case scenario is that there will be no more replicas, that people will still continue to buy from big luxury houses, and the poor people will simply not consider buying from luxury houses and will not aspire to do so anymore. We tell us that the worst case on our side of the house is only that the scarcity of the actual products will increase, and that poor will also have access to the products. And we don't see that that's bad because there's three ways we win today's debate. Propositions completely fail of definition, their contradictory case, as well as the fact that we can flip propositions points. We've proven to you today how exactly the benefits of replicas outweigh the detriment through a clear setup and framing, and the overall propositions world is a complete fail. We're so
Okay, thank you, opposition reply. And to conclude, let's have a proposition reply.
Am I visible and audible?
Yep.
Okay. Opponents ready, judges ready. Let's start in 3, 2, 1. Look, we might not speak as fast as or EPL as them, but if you do a reality check and not just stay in debate land, it is clear that we win the debate. There are two things you should ask yourself. Number one, in terms of accessibility, the first question you have to resolve is the necessity to have a luxury brand. They only answered this in op-wit by saying that you need luxury brands to get a job. This is laughable. I don't know how it is in Hong Kong, but I highly suspect that most middle-class workers don't just wear an LV bag to work. Number two, it is ridiculous to say that professional HR is going to give you a job just because you have an LV bag instead of skills. Number three, okay, if they say that you need it for a job interview, why can't they just buy a second-hand one? No one can tell. Why can't they just rent? No one knows. So the crucial thing you need to note is that this team from Ops speaks so fast, but they forget to actually respond to our mechanisms from Matthew. 4, their framing kills themselves. They say that, oh, replicas is easily traceable. So if we're taking you at their best, apparently this is very elitist company in Hong Kong where you have to have your own LV for interview. So are you literally saying that the quote unquote elitist HR will not be able to tell if your bag is fake? If it is true that fashion really matters for interviews, then we flip their logic by saying that it'll backfire your impression. Why? Because you're using a fake bag that is more embarrassing and lands you a worse impression than not using one at all. Or and it won't lend you an impression, unlike when you rent or buy a secondhand one. So here's the thing. If you do a reality check, probably luxury bags are not determinative, especially for the poor who probably doesn't work in this extremely elitist company in Hong Kong that Capstone is talking about. And just like that, if you have skills, it won't determine anything because companies want productivity and not models. They care about your actual resume instead of what bag you wear. It is funny that they said that we have poor engagement, but can you please check your paper and see what are the responses on our 5 alternatives on accessibility? If you are an objective judge who has a reality check and common sense and dully track the debate, you won't get swayed by their long roasting. The only desperate response from the pie is number 1. Uniqlo is a replica. No, it is not. Uniqlo operates under its own brand name and has developed a distinct brand identity. Unlike replica brands that attempt to imitate or copy the branding of established luxury or designer labels, Uniqlo markets their products under its own labels and logos. And number 2, they say that the brands are not sustainable. Where there are other options, and there are literally many other options. Maybe try checking online marketplace and see many alternative brands. Maybe stop living in your rich bubble opposition. Number 2, on intellectual property. They say that fashion always copies each other. Yes, we got it. How many times do you need to repeat it? Now, you don't engage on our nuance in principle. We literally have 2 pathways of victory in principles. Number 1, you're valued by your own unique intellectual contribution. That does not have to be 100% original. We literally tell you that there are problem-solving contributions in terms of garments, things such as that, and etc. And number 2, we told you on the basis of intellectual labor. Crucially, their burden is to prove why intellectual property has to be an idea 100% original. This is an argument against all intellectual property. Now, due to the things that I have said before, I have never ever been prouder to stand pro. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Proposition Reply, and thank you everybody for a good debate. You're free to cross the floor and shake hands now, and all of the panelists, maybe you can move to room 4 for discussions. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.